Hello everyone. In the previous video we talked about how we can have a pivot table and how we can have a pivot charts. In this video, which is the last video of the basic of the Microsoft Excel learning fundamentals, I want to talk about a little bit about the dashboard. And the dashboard is a thing that we can have with the pivot table in the Excel actually. There is a multiple ways to having a dashboards, but the fastest way and the easiest way to have a dashboard is by using a pivot table. So until now in this course, we saw how we can have an invoice and how we can generate an invoice in the Excel and how we can analyze our data when we have a bunch of data in the Excel, and also we saw that how we can have a pivot table. So now we want to make a use of our pivot tables. So for example, you actually created some pivot tables and now you want to have a dashboard. The dashboard is a bunch of information created based on some charts or a table together give us some information about the behavior of our data. And another advantage of the dashboard is the thing that if we change our data, some changes made in the data, the dashboard charts and the table will be updated and we can have the same report weekly or monthly or based on the different years. So the dashboard is the thing that shows us some meaningful information, useful information just by one glance. And this is the dashboard so useful for us. For example, if our manager or by myself, I want to see how my business is working right now, how is my behavior of my businesses, or I want to send some report to my manager to show that what is the trend of our sales and what is the trend of inventory and so on. So I want to send or I want to have such report based on the days, based on the month, or based on the years, or based on the different products. So I use the dashboard, and I do not want to create such a charts or report each month or each day. I want to just select some days or months, or I want to select my date, and automatically the charts will be updated based on the data on these days or in these dates. And also if I change on my base data, I want to have update of my charts and information. So this is how dashboards help us for having the reports and based on the different dates. So we learn how we can have a pivot table. For having a dashboard, you just need to create a bunch of pivot tables. And for example, I want to have a pivot table to show the total transaction, number of transactions. This is how I can create this pivot table based on the main data. And another, for example, for the trend of my sales and the number of my sales and the summation of the sales I had in the specific year. So I just need to insert the pivot table. Just in the one page there actually is good to have all your pivot table for creating a dashboard in one sheet, in one tab sheet, worksheet. And by doing so, you have to remember that when your data updated, these pivot table needs some space to be get wider. For example, if 2020 comes, we will have another row for this pivot table that shows the number of sales for 2020. And so when you create pivot table, you do not want to have such pivot table in this place, because when the 2020 comes, the pivot table, or 2021 comes, the pivot table of the years, trend of the years will not have enough space to be updated, so you will have some errors. So place the pivot table all in the rows together, and be sure that if the data be added to the main table, the columns of your table should not be added. For example, if you want to have another columns, if you have, for example, a pivot table that generates rows and columns, be sure that you have such a table in the end of your worksheet, because for example this pivot table need to be have a space in the rows as well as some space in the columns. So, but you have to have such a pivot table at the end of your worksheet. And if you have multiple such pivot table that will be grows in the rows and the columns as well, you need to have such pivot tables at the another workbook, which by that way you will have enough space to have such a pivot table. But these pivot table will not be updated based on the columns, but they will be they will need the rows, the space in the rows, to have enough space in the rows to add the data on it. So please remember that specific. But in the month, for example, you will not have the you will not need much more space in the rows. For example, in this pivot table, the data of the month will not be more than 12 a month. So this specific pivot table will be static in this manner. We just will have 12 rows and 2 columns, and it not be more than this. So please remember how you manage to have a pivot table in the one worksheet. If you have a pivot table that will grows at the rows and the columns, you need to have another worksheet for that specific pivot table. So I just create pivot tables. I insert these pivot tables in the one same sheet, and after that I just add for this specific this one I just need a table. So in my dashboard I just create cells that link to this pivot table. As you can see by formula, this data use get pivot table data. So I link this cell to my pivot table, and I create my pivot table by this way. If you, for example, want to have a bigger table, for example, if I want to show my year's trend by tables in my dashboard, I can have a pivot table as well. Just remember to have enough space for your pivot table. So this is how I can have a table. But for the charts, I just need to simply insert the chart. For example, by going to the Analyze tab, insert the chart, make it beautiful, and then cut this charts into your dashboard, place it in the meaningful place. For example, for the second, for this one, I wanna have this one in the down of my pivot dashboard, and I place it right here. So make it beautiful, find a good place in the dashboard for your pivot chart, and then place it in that place, and arrange all your charts in this dashboard. You can have more than one page for your dashboard. It's depend on you, but by my experience, do not have more than 3 pages of the dashboard, because when the analyzing data, when the information grows, makes a manager or makes you exhaust for reading the data. So try to have a simple dashboard, try to have a less information, and try to not have more than 3 pages. The best way to have a dashboard, just having 1 pages for easily see how is going on your business. So please remember that we can see the reports that have many pages, and these are not useful reports, because this such reports exhaust manager or other user to reading your information. So after you place your charts in your dashboard, your pivot charts in your dashboard, try to use a slicer for your dates, for your day, month and year. This is why I separate the data in my main table. For the date, I can have a date in just one cell, but if I want to have slicers that enable me to easily filter the charts based on the different month and the different days, I just need to separate the columns of my date in the main table. So by this way I can have slicers. So have a good space for your slicer, and then insert your slicer. For example, based on the date, the year, the month and the day are the most used slicer for filtering the data based on the date, because the main feature of your dashboard is the usable information, is the use of the information based on the different dates. So this is how I can have useful dates and select them. And also, for example, if I want to see the charts or data based on my products, I can have another slicer based on the products or other things that you think are good to have. For example, if you have specific customers, there you can have another slicer based on your customers. So this slicer enables you to filter the data based on the specific customers as well. But in this one, I just think the date is enough, and also having a slicer for products will be good. So another thing you need to do is when you add the slicer, for example, when you want to add a slicer, you need to add it just for one specific pivot table. Go select your pivot table, go to the Analyze tab, and then use Insert Slicer. When you insert your slicer, this slicer will be filtered the data just for this specific pivot table. Now you wanna connect this slicer to other pivot charts you have or other pivot table you have. So you need to select each of your slicer. For example, you start for the year, go to the options, go to the report connection, and then just check the boxes of your pivot table that you want to be filtered based on this slicer. So I just check all my pivot tables, because when I filter this slicer based on the 2050, I want all the charts and pivot table filtered based on this year. And you can do that. You can do this for all other slicer as well. So you connect all your slicer to all pivot table you have, and you need to remember that when you use the pivot table and when you use a slicer for that pivot table, you can connect these slicer to all pivot table that use the same data. So if I had another table, main table, and I have another pivot table by using that data, I cannot connect my slicer to that pivot table. I just can connect the slicer to the pivot tables that use the same data. So do that, and by doing so you will have a slicer connected to all pivot table, and you are able to filter all the data based on just selecting one slicer. The another thing you need to remember that whenever you update your main table, you need to come to the dashboard and use refresh data. So when you refresh the data, all the data related to this main table will be refreshed and show you the updated data. So that's why I choose to have a update button here. By having this update button, I add a macro to my Excel that for the user that do not know about the refresh data. So there is a lot of manager or user that do not know that they have to update the data. So I add this button here that use the macros. So what is the macros and what is the VBA? This is the topic that I want to talk in another course. So in this course, we just learn about the basic of the Excel. We learn about how we can have an invoice, how we can manage and change the cells format to having a specific form or a specific showing data. We learn how we can store the data in the Excel and how we can use the Excel tables. And after that, we learn about the charts and pivot table and the conditional formatting as well. And we learn how we can have a dashboard. In the next course that I want to create for you, I want to talk about how we can have a data entry form in the Excel and how we can have a VBA in the Excel, which is use the developer tab that you do not see right now. You have to enable the developer tab that I will tell you how you can do that in the next course. So until next video and until the next course, I wish you the best and goodbye. In order to watch more training videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Diaco Ltd. And if you want to see our products, please visit our website, diaco.co.uk.